Hi, welcome back to the channel. I'm Michelle, and today I'm going to talk about how homeschooling takes time and effort and some tips for the upcoming homeschool year. So if you're new to my channel, I have 3 kids. I have a 11-year-old in 6th grade, I have a 7-year-old doing 2nd, 3rd grade level work, and a 4-year-old doing pre-K. So this is our 4th year of homeschooling, and I just wanted to share this message at the beginning of the year that homeschooling takes time and effort, because I think you're going to get a lot in the homeschooling videos right now about, schedules and plans and how things are going. And I've already started to see people, changing up curriculum before they even started or throwing things out after a couple weeks. And I just want this message to be out there too, that homeschooling is going to take some time. It's going to take some personal time. It's going to take effort from your part. I sometimes feel like social media gives it this idea that it's really easy, it's open and go, it's always fun, it's always pretty, the kids are always excited to do it, you're always excited to teach. That's not always the case. I'm not saying those moments don't happen. They absolutely do. But when you get into the first couple months of homeschooling or the homeschooling year, and that newness wears off and you start realizing that this is going to be a lot, I think one of the reasons you see a lot of people kind of go back to public or private school in middle school and high school is because the workload gets harder for you. It's, the early years, elementary years, they're fun, they're crafty, they're easy to do. But once your kid gets older and the work becomes more demanding on both you and your child, a lot of parents just jump ship. And there's nothing wrong with that if you feel like your child's education is better suited in a different environment or led by someone else. There's nothing wrong with that. But I'm saying that the messaging I've been seeing a lot lately is that this is easy, or it should be very naturally flowing, and it takes time and effort. So these are my tips that have helped me and things I've learned the last 4 years that have helped run my homeschool a lot more smoothly. So the first one is schedule prep time for you and schedule self-care for you. So I think this is an obvious one. You need teacher prep time, even if you have littles, even if you have olders, if you have the gambit of young kids and old kids. I think there's about 8 years between my oldest and my youngest. You need to schedule in teacher prep time. There is a reason private and public school teachers have a prep period, because there are things you're going to need to do. Even if you have open and go curriculum, you're going to need to read through the teacher guides. I can't tell you how many videos I've seen where people talk about a curriculum and it's very clear they didn't read the teacher guide, and they were doing their own thing. That's great if you want to do your own thing, but at least learn how the program is supposed to be implemented before you go off and do your own thing. Reading through the teacher guide, lesson prepping. I choose to do this so we do a Sabbath schedule. We do 6 weeks on, 1 week off. It's not always 6 weeks, sometimes it's 7 or 8 weeks, and then a week off. But what I do with that week off is I prep the next chunk of time, the next 6, 7 weeks on our calendar. So that's printing things, copying things, getting supplies ready for science, making sure I'm reading through the lesson plans. On Saturdays of every week, I do take like a 25 to 45-minute chunk, depending on what I'm doing, to review the lessons I'm going to be doing. We use Dimensions Math. I look through the textbook and the workbook and the teacher guide, and especially with my oldest, she's doing 5th grade Dimensions, even though she's in 6th grade. These are concepts, like I don't even remember how to use a protractor. I hate to relearn how to use a protractor and teach my child that before I actually sat down to teach her, because you're going to be wasting your time and your child's time sitting there for 15, 20 minutes trying to remember how to do something when you could have done this before you both sat down. Your day is going to move a lot quicker and a lot smoother if you already know what you have to teach and have a general idea of how to teach that. So I schedule that specific time to look over math lessons, to look over science. We are doing core knowledge history this year, and we're doing the 7th grade unit, United States history. And I've never done anything in the middle school years with core knowledge before. So although I've used it for the past, 3 years, this is our 4th year, I needed to become familiarized with the format because it is different than other core knowledge units we've used in the past. Giving yourself time to familiarize yourself with the curriculum is really important, because your kids, if it's a new curriculum to them, it's going to take time for them to get accustomed to it and understand how it works. So the more knowledge you bring to that table of how to use it, how to teach it, the better it will go. Same with self-care. I'm a person, I have a lot of different things I have to do. I homeschool. I run a co-op with another mom. I am in charge of the Christian education at my church, so I plan all of our Sunday school and youth activities for an entire year for our church. And in order to be able to do all these things well, I need to be a scheduled person. And that means in this time of my life, I need to make sure I'm scheduling time for myself, whether that be meeting up with friends, or on Sunday I do a self-care routine where I try to do something creative. I'm always trying to make sure I'm reading because I'm a person that really enjoys reading. Recently, I've started doing watercolor using the Thistle and Biscuits watercolor unit. So making sure you're getting these chunks of time for yourself. I know it can be hard, especially when you have the littles. I'm getting to the point where even though my youngest is 4, my oldest is 11, where I do have a little more freedom and time to schedule these things in. So if you're still in the, hard years of littles, I understand how difficult it is to get that self-care or that time for yourself. But even sometimes, instead of sitting down and watching Netflix or doom scrolling or watching YouTube videos, sometimes those things really do end up draining us more than giving us anything. So be paying attention to how you're feeling when you're doing these things. If you're feeling worse after watching YouTube videos, stop watching YouTube. If you're feeling exhausted from doom scrolling because you felt like you didn't do anything, you got nothing out of it, or it made you feel like you're not doing something you're supposed to be doing, stop doing it. Spend your time doing things that are beneficial to yourself. Number 2 is, if you've watched any of my videos, it's no surprise, have a schedule. Do you have to stick to every little piece of thing on that schedule? Do you have to have it by hour? No. But if you have a general flow of how your day is going to and the consistency of that flow, things are going to run so much smoother. I've talked about schedules in the past. I'll link up above our current homeschool year schedule. There's a lot on there, and we fit it all in. I talked about we are in our second week now. We just finished our second week of homeschool. I uploaded a first week recap for you guys. I'll link that up above. But everything went really well because I was prepared, because everything was scheduled. My kids are familiar with a lot of the curriculum we're using, so they know the expectations. And unfortunately, what I'm seeing a lot on social media is this idea that, let's throw something out after a couple weeks, or we didn't get to that, let's get rid of it. If you make scheduled time, you can get to these things. And I think you really, really need to give curriculum a time period. That's why I really like our Sabbath schedule, because it does allow me to make adjustments. I don't throw things out after a couple weeks. I give it that 6-7 week span, and if adjustments need to be made, then I make them, because it takes time, like I said, for you to adapt to a curriculum and your child to become accustomed to it. There's a learning curve there that needs to happen. And if you knee-jerk remove something before your child gives you time to really be exposed to it and understand it, you're not helping them. You're just pulling something that could have worked. You just didn't give them a chance. And honestly, a lot of kids, when presented with new things or new curriculum or new routines, they're hesitant and they're already pushing back just because it's new. That doesn't mean it doesn't work. It just means you, as the parent, the educator, need to be able to have that firm line that this is what we're doing. We can make adjustments as needed, but this is the expectation of what we're doing. Number 3 is make lunches in the morning. So we don't often go anywhere during the afternoon that we would need to have a packed lunch. And we use the Planet Box. I'll link up above my most recent back to school lunches. And it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be Pinterest or TikTok or whatever is trendy now. But making those lunches for my 3 kids ahead of time makes my day run a lot smoother. I don't have to stop in the middle of the day to make everybody's lunch. I don't have to, because my kids are at different levels, they finish at different times, which means that when they are done with something, they can go eat lunch while I am still working with another child on something. That makes it so there's not a kid waiting around for me, and I'm not making a child wait on me because I'm making lunch. Making lunches ahead of time, although it can seem like an inconvenience, does really help your day run smoother, and especially since when the kids are all eating lunch, eventually they'll all get to the lunch table. I use that time to do things too. So one of the things I do is I always switch the load of laundry extra in the morning, so that keeps up on laundry. And I always check over my oldest work that she has already completed. This year she is capable of doing a lot of independent work, which is awesome. But it also means me, as the educator, the teacher, I have to be on top of things and make sure I'm correcting and looking over things right away. Because one, I need to make sure she's understanding what she's reading. Just because a kid is capable of being independent or the curriculum is written for independence doesn't mean they're ready. Number two, I have to make sure that she's doing the work. It's very easy, especially in these middle school years, to become complacent, to become a little lazy, to kind of skip over things. And if you're not checking on a regular basis, you're gonna get that bad habit formed. So I wanna make sure I'm checking things so she understands that it's getting done and that this is the expectation. I'm reinforcing that, yes, mom checks the work right away. And also it's good to give feedback right away that if they didn't understand something in math or grammar, that right there, you're there to help with that. Number 4 is start early. Now I know one of the benefits of homeschooling is that you can wake up whenever you want and get started and have a slow day. Again, for my family, it is beneficial for us to start earlier because I find that, especially with my kids, as the day goes on, they just become more distracted. And it's a lot easier as a parent towards the end of the day when you're tired to let things go or let things slip because you're like, oh, I just want this day to be done. And it's okay to have days like that. But when your days like that become weeks like that and become your school year, that's when it's a problem. So we start early. I start with my 4-year-old at 8:25 and he usually goes to 9 a.m. for his schoolwork, his chunk. And then with my 7 and 11-year-old, we do 9 a.m. and we've been finishing between 12:30 and 1 every day. And that's with a 45 minute lunch break for them. But again, if we get going, right? First of all, everyone's aware of the schedule. No one's grumbling about getting started. I'm not, pulling them from tablets. I really am not a big fan of tablet or screen time prior to school just because it's harder to pull them back. So my kids get all these things done, schoolwork done, and then they have, the huge chunk of their afternoon to play, to do their screen time, to do the things they want. And now that public school's back in session, it actually works out really nice because my kids often play with the, neighborhood kids and they don't get out of school till 3. So my kids are done by 1. So they have, a 2-hour time chunk to do whatever they want before their friends are done with school. So getting started earlier is beneficial. I think you're more motivated. It's easier for them to learn with a fresh brain than as the day drags on and things become more distracting. And you as the parent, you're gonna get more tired as the day goes on. So I'd rather start early and get done at 1. Next one is prioritize homeschooling. Again, this kind of leads into the other one too, that I know it's easy to say that, well, let's make our life revolve around, we can fit homeschooling in whenever. That doesn't work for me. I'm not a big advocate for that. School is really important. What we're doing is really important. I want my children to understand and value education, that this is something that's important. We're going to do this before screen time. We're going to do this before we go out and play with our friends. And there's plenty of time for them to do that. And giving them that messaging that this is something serious we're doing, that this is their education, that these are beneficial things they're learning. They're not just learning this because I think they need to learn it. There's a reason that we're doing these things, and I think prioritizing. So we don't make doctor's appointments around homeschooling hours, and that with the exception of my 7-year-old who sees a specialist because she has celiac disease, she sees a pediatric GI specialist, and that's 2 hours away. Usually when she has those appointments, and it's one of those we take whatever time we can because it's a specialist, her day is pretty much spent at the GI doctor. That's the only exception we make for that. We don't do dentist appointments, checkups, any of that stuff during homeschool hours. Same things, if the neighbors are off early or have a half a day, even if they have a half a day, my kids would be done in time. But if for some reason there's a day off of school and we still are doing school, we finish school before they go out and play. And that's not being mean, that's prioritizing our schoolwork. And even the neighbors now know that my kids are done by 1 and then they're free anytime after that. And usually they don't want to play before that anyways, let's be honest. They get up really late and do whatever they want. But I think prioritizing, making sure you're getting the things done instead of, laundry can wait, dishes can wait. There's a lot of things that can wait, but prioritize and making sure you're getting your homeschooling done. because it's so easy to fall in a pattern that I'll just do this tomorrow, and you don't actually do it. And that tomorrow becomes a week, and that week becomes a month, and before you know it, you dropped an entire subject because you weren't taking the time to do it. Next one is 6, take your time, but make sure you stay on track. So I think this is an important one. I've definitely got the messaging this beginning of this year on, especially online, social media, that make sure you're taking your time. And again, I think to preface that, you should be saying take your time, but make sure you're just staying on track, because I guarantee you, I saw this last year, a lot of people saying, take your time, take your time. If you need more time, that's great, but those same people didn't have that consistency, weren't getting those things done, and by the end of the year, they were cramming 6 months worth of curriculum into a month. And if there's one thing you've learned from my channel, is that cramming in curriculum in condensed period of time is not beneficial. I've done a lot of reading on working memory. My 7-year-old has ADHD, she has working memory issues, working memory, cognitive development, learning. I've done a lot of reading about the brain, and children need time to process the information they're learning. So taking a curriculum that's supposed to take 6 months and doubling up the lessons, or taking things out and only doing the bare minimum isn't beneficial. If you take your time, go at your pace, but just make sure every day you're staying on track and you're getting the things done you need to do. That way when you get to the end of the year, you don't have the problem where you haven't done half of your curriculum, or you don't know what's going to happen because you can't do next year's curriculum because you haven't even finished this year. Take your time, but stay on track. There's nothing wrong with going at a slower pace, but making sure you're making upward progress is really important. And last one, remember your motivation of why you're doing this. So for me, this is important. The reason I homeschool is because I am capable of providing the best educational environment for my kids at this point. I'm not so naive or proud to believe that I will always be that person to provide the best environment. There are situations where I think public or private school are a better idea or solution or environment for a child. I don't think every child should be homeschooled. I don't think every parent should be homeschooling. But it's important for me to remember that I am doing this because I am trying to provide the best educational opportunities for my child. That when I'm having hard days, or when I'm tired and I don't want to do this, or I'm frustrated, or I'm getting preteen rolling their eyes at me, to remember that the reason I'm doing this is for the child in front of me. I'm not homeschooling, the neighbors. I'm not homeschooling the public school kids. I'm homeschooling the child in front of me. And to remember that this is why I'm doing it. I'm not doing it for my personal reasons. I'm not doing it because I want my kids not to be exposed to things, or I think the public school is isn't providing good enough education. I'm doing this because it's what's best for my child at this point in time, and that could change. But to remember that it really is a motivator, that when I'm tired and I don't want to do something, to remember that's why I'm doing this, because you can do anything when it's for your kids, and that's what their education should be. We should be doing this for them, not to them. So those are my tips for the upcoming school year. I hope you found those helpful. If there's any tips you'd like to leave in the comments below, I'd love to read those. If you have any questions about anything I talked about, leave in the comments below as well. If not, thank you for watching, and I hope you guys have a great school year.